Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to head up towards Gothenburg once again. Göteborg, as you would say in Swedish, the Swedish craft beer capital up there on the west coast. Got to get that Gothenburg catchphrase in when we're reviewing Gothenburg beers because it's a bit of a channel tradition these days. And for this review we're going to return to a brewery that you've seen me review many things from before. But this one is a little bit different compared to what we've had from them previously, and this is going to be my third and final review from these guys over the course of November 2020. So for this review then we are going to go back to the wonderful OO Brewing, and today we are having a taste of the Scarlet Rye. So this one comes in at 6.7% ABV and this one is a Rye IPA, so a little bit stronger than their normal IPAs. The other two beers I've reviewed from these guys this month were the 100 Amarillo and also the 50/50 Citra Equinaut, that one was, and both of those, you know, were very nice beers. I really enjoy those two series of beers that you get from OO Brewing, because if you're like me and a bit of an ingredients nerd, they're very good for education purposes and teaching you all about the different hops. Actually, the 100 series is the single hop series and the 50/50 is the dual hopped IPA series. Those are New England IPAs, of course, which is a style that this brewery really made its name in. The beer that I would always recommend you try from OO Brewing would be the Narangi, which is one of the four kind of cult classic Swedish IPAs in my opinion, and like I say, that's where this brewery made their name. But they do quite a few other styles very well as well. They've got a few really interesting pilsners. Probably the most widely distributed one would be the Ectopils, and every year they also release the Arctos Imperial Stout and the Long Boil Barley Wine, and those are definitely worth checking out as well. Every month they tend to release a 50/50 through the Lokala Småskaligt and Systembolaget. Every so often you'll get a 100 series as well, and then you get kind of quirky beers like this one too. And I think it's nice at the moment because we are starting to see a sort of re-diversification of the IPA category. For a very long time it's been lots of kind of hazy New Englands, which is good. You know, New England IPAs are good, but you do want a few different things, and we're starting to see more West Coasts, more black IPAs, red IPAs, and then we're getting the odd Rye IPA these days as well. But this is a style that's very unusual to come across actually. I think I've only reviewed maybe 2 or 3 of these in the whole year so far. Probably this could even be the second one if memory serves me correctly. I can only think that I've reviewed one of them, but probably the most accessible version of this style would be the Brewdog Albino Squid Assassin. That one is done fairly regularly from what I understand, and it is actually a very nice example of the sub-style as well. So check that one out if you get the chance. But yeah, cool to have a Rye IPA from OO Brewing, another style that I haven't tried from these guys before, so fingers crossed it turns out to be another very nice beer. And knowing this brewery, it probably will be. These guys don't put bad beer out there. So yeah, very curious to see how this one turns out. Like I said, this was released as part of the Lokala Småskaligt assortment for November of 2020 through Systembolaget here in Sweden. The exact release date was the 1st of November, if I remember rightly. But yeah, let's see how we get on with this one then. A 6.7% Rye IPA. So as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from OO Brewing before, and you will no doubt see more added to that list in the fairly near future because I do keep an eye out for their beers. There's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel of course has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about OO Brewing then, on to my brewery notes. So as I've told you already, OO Brewing are based in Gothenburg, Göteborg on the west coast of Sweden, and the company was founded back in 2011 by Olaf and Ole Andersson, who are not related to each other, but they are childhood friends. And for many years these guys were also avid home brewers as well. But Ole was apparently heavily involved in the Gothenburg beer scene since pre-drinking age. He was the original head brewer at Stigbergets Brewery, who are probably one of the best known Swedish breweries these days, and it was there that the original OO beers were produced. So while Ola is doing the brewing side of things, Olaf manages Olaf manages the business side of the brewery basically, and he used to work for a period of time in Copenhagen at a marketing agency. But I believe now he is dedicating his time 100% into OO brewing. But these guys really just started off with the idea that they wanted to make beers that they would love to drink for themselves. But in April of 2017, Ola took the decision to leave Stig Beers and invest his time fully with OO brewing, and they invested in their own facility in Hisingen near the Tingstedt Bridge, and it's equipped with a 2,000 litre brewing system, which means they can brew up to 500,000 litres of beer per year. In the first year there, they brewed about 100,000 litres of beer, and they're basically planning to expand up to capacity over the next few years. Apparently in 2019 they produced around 300,000 litres of beer, and there are plans to expand that further. I'm not sure if they will have been able to expand so much over 2020 with the whole COVID-19 situation. Maybe they have. Really not quite sure, but I would doubt it, to be honest with you. But as of November 2020, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 78 different kinds of beer, and that is only going to increase with time actually. I must have reviewed about 30 or so of the OO Brewing beers on the channel. I've reviewed at least, I think I've reviewed at least one a month from these guys over the course of this year, the 50/50s, and a couple of hundreds, and then we've had a few oddities come out from them as well. But a very, very good brewery, in my opinion. I would say probably the best beer that I've had from these guys so far would be the Charismatico this year. That's my favourite one this year. But two beers that I also really like from these guys are the Evergreen and the Muscles. Those are more kind of West Coasty type IPAs actually, and those were always very, very good. So I really hope that they bring those back at some point. It would be nice to see those back in the OO Brewing core range actually. And now that we're getting a bit more diversity again in the IPA category, who knows, maybe they will bring them back. But yeah, very, very nice brewery this one, and as I said, one that I would always recommend that you try if you're interested in Swedish craft beer. So yeah, that's all I can really tell you about the brewery. As I said, if you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all those different beers that they've done. So yeah, let's get on and actually have a taste of this beer then. I'm very, very curious to see what this one has in store for us. So as you can see, the artwork on this beer is a little bit different. There you can see the rose on this one. I guess they basically, yeah, they're maybe a play on words, Scarlet Rose, Scarlet Rye. So yeah, you can see it is done like an old kind of textbook page or something. You can see the punch holes in the side there, but yeah, nicely presented. Just a black page on the other one, which I'm not quite sure about. I'm not sure what the inspiration behind the artwork is there. Does it say who it's by or anything? No. Could even be that they do it themselves. It could even be that Olaf does these himself. I'm really not sure. But oh wait, no, it does say here, telling you lies. The artwork is Johansson had a feverish desire for roses by Lundgren and Lundqvist. So yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, they're quite a well-known art. I'm sure they're based in Stockholm actually, if I remember rightly. But they're quite, Lundgren and Lundqvist is actually, I've seen them design labels for other breweries as well, if I remember rightly. So yeah, that's pretty cool. But yeah, it does say that this one contains rye and wheat. So this one I think could be quite an interesting beer. But yeah, the artwork on that is pretty interesting and pretty quirky. Quite different to the other OO Brewing ones. But there you can see the sort of data side of the OO Brewing can. Just hold that there for you. Scarlet Rye IPA, 6.7% ABV, 44 centilitres or 440 millilitres. Yeah, standard measurement for an OO Brewing IPA in terms of the can size. But yeah, I think I must have paid about 45 crowns or 50 crowns for this, which is again standard for an OO Brewing beer. But yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. Very, very curious to see what this beer has in store for us. I think this one will be very, very nice. So yeah, ooh, look at that. Look at that lovely copper colour. This is what you expect from a rye IPA. Usually these are a kind of deeper copper than you would get even from like a West Coast double IPA. So a red rye, yes, red rye IPA, this one is probably a more accurate term than simply a rye IPA. But yeah, this looks very, very nice actually. I'm not sure if it is a term that the red IPA and red IPA and rye IPA, are they synonymous? I'm really not sure. Something I've never kind of figured out, to be honest with you. But you know, it's always the American Amber is the other style that's kind of related to this one as well, the American Amber ales. But yeah, the colour of this beer is absolutely lovely. If we shine the light through this one's a lovely kind of gingery copper colour almost just like a kind of copper coin, something like that there. It looks very, very nice, I have to say. But yeah, very, very deep blood orange amber colour this one, but it certainly looks to you guys on the camera, just looking at the camera control, it comes across very kind of copper-like in its appearance, but it's a beautiful looking beer, I have to say. The head on this one, when we poured it, was about a quarter finger of a frothy, I would say very light, kind of beige coloured head. This one, there's one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head there. There's just a very, very thin, wispy, foamy layer on top of that, but it's got a nice foamy ring around the edge of the glass. But yeah, in terms of a rye IPA, this is kind of what you would expect. You would expect a nice, very rich blood orange amber or kind of coppery colour, as we've termed it already. But yeah, certainly looks the part. Let's have a closer look at the aroma of this one and just see how we get on. Very curious, as I said. Ooh, that does smell very nice. I've got a feeling that this is Mosaic and maybe Amarillo that's in here. Just going to say that straight off. The rye IPAs, I think the reason that I enjoy rye IPAs so much is that they tend to have orangey flavours in them. The rye and orangey hops tends to go together very well. Something's telling me there might be a bit of Mandarina Bavaria in this. There's something just a wee bit German about some of the hoppy characters in this too. And Mandarina Bavaria, high alpha acid German hop, but it still gives you the same grassy and floral notes that you'd expect of you know, Hallertaus and Tittnangers and things. But we'll come to the hops later. Malty side of things then. So yeah, when you take the aroma of this beer in, I mean, straight away with this one, when you sugar it up, you start to get that, you do get a nice big kind of brown bready quality out of it. You get that German kind of rye bread sweetness out of this one, but there's a lot of brown sugar in there as well. There is a big sweet caramel, it's got a little bit of a toasted edge to it. There's some nice kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity qualities to the beer as well. Yeah, it's got some really, really nice qualities to it, this beer. I really like how that goes together. The malt base for me, it's actually quite straightforward. Almost, the thing with the rye IPAs as well is that they tend to smell boozier than they actually are, in my experience, and that is just because you've usually, you know, you've got that big, thick kind of brown bready sweetness to them, the rye bready sort of sweetness, but you've also usually got a good bit of caramel and biscuit in there. And to me, if I was blind smelling this beer, I'd probably think this was like an 8%er at least. You know, just because of the amount of sweetness you get out of this one, it is pretty impressive actually. I'll have to say that about it. The sweetness you get out of this beer is pretty damn impressive. So bear that in mind when you try this one. It is really quite nice in that sense actually. So yeah, big caramelly sweetness out of this one. It does have a wee bit of the darker kind of boozy brown sugar to it. At the same time you get a bit of sweetness, you get a bit of that McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing, but you do get that kind of smooth, brown, bready, German rye bready sort of quality to the beer as well. You might be forgiven for thinking there's a few kind of other grainy things out of this one, but there's also a few yeah, there's also a few kind of bread crusty notes and things in there as well, and maybe other things like that. But yeah, it's an interesting, it is an interesting smelling beer, this one, I have to say. So take a bit of time and just enjoy that malt base before you get stuck into it. But on the hoppy side of things, this is where it gets a wee bit interesting. Yeah. On the hoppy side of things, the green side of the hops, as is usually the case with the rye IPAs, is not as noticeable as it's going to be in other types of IPA. But you do get a wee bit of earthiness out of this one. There is a wee bit of floral character in there, and you will get a little bit of grassiness as well. There is, for me, just a little bit of a noble edge to this one. But the thing that really comes out in these rye IPAs, in my mind, is the fruit. The fruit is very noticeable in these beers. So, with this beer, for me, it's quite a wide variety of oranges that you get out of this one. You can smell a nice little bit of a kind of, you do get a bit more of that juicy Amarillo-y type orange in there, but there's something that's telling me, I'm not sure. I really thought initially when I smelt this one there was a bit of Amarillo in it, but now I'm wondering if it's Mosaic, because it just does not come across as being oily enough in the aroma to be Amarillo. And for me, that's the thing. Amarillo was always a very, very oily smelling hop actually. It's the classic hop that you should use with these things. And I mean, I wonder, I'm in two minds, because obviously this month they've released the Amarillo 100, and it would kind of make sense that they would use a bit, if they've produced an Amarillo 100, maybe they would make a big order and use it in the Scarlet Rye as well, actually. So there is just something, I'm in two minds about this one, because when you take the aroma in a bit more deeply, then you get the more oily orangey notes that you would expect of Amarillo. But to me, there's quite a bit. I've got a feeling there might be Mosaic and Mandarina Bavaria in this one as well, because the Mosaic just gives you that slightly brighter tangerine note, and Mosaic can sometimes give you just a wee hint of pineapple, and you do get an almost kind of marmalade-y. You do get a little bit of that sort of marmalade-y note off this one as well, which I could see being a more slightly pineapple-y sort of note as well. But yeah, you do get the grassy notes in this come across as being a little bit noble-like, so I wouldn't be surprised if there is a wee bit of Mandarina Bavaria in this one as well, actually. So yeah, this is a really, to me, this is quite a quirky beer in that sense. It's big and orangey. You might be forgiven for thinking there's one or two little red fruity notes to it, like a little touch of a fig or something. I could definitely see that coming out of this one, because I did get that initially when I took the aroma, and there is a wee bit of a red fruity kind of figgy note coming out of this beer as well. But yeah, it really has some really interesting qualities to it, this beer, actually. But yeah, quite orangey, I have to say, very, very orangey in terms of its notes. Deeper and more oily if you take it in. On top of that, you've got some brighter, juicier tangerines in there as well, in my mind, and just a little bit of a kind of figgy quality as well. So yeah, take a little bit of time and just enjoy that aroma before you get stuck into it. But we're going to have a taste of this beer now and just see how we get on. So yeah, this one is the Scarlet Rye IPA, coming in at 6.7% ABV from Brewing in Gothenburg on the Swedish west coast. Let's get stuck in. Slanja, skål. Oh yeah, that is pretty nice, actually. First thing you're going to notice about this beer is that it is just very, very kind of solid and slick, actually. It's a very oily IPA, this one. It does have a wee bit of bitterness to it, but again, it's not it's not the kind of it's not the most bitter of IPAs that you're going to come across either. It almost comes across as a little bit more of a kind of modern take on the Rye IPA, if that makes sense, a lower bitterness one. And of course, because of the New England IPAs, everyone does expect lower bitterness. But yeah, it really is a nice beer, this one. It is very, very solid. But for me, it's a little bit strange to have a Rye IPA without a little bit more kind of hoppy bitterness to it. But that's to take nothing away from this beer. This is pretty solid. Yeah, this one's really nice, really slick. The mouthfeel of this is great, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. It's kind of got everything you would expect, this beer, to be honest with you. I really like this one, and the colour, as I say, really strikes me. Remember, colour's down to the type of malts you use, 2, the length of boil. I'm not sure if you normally would give a Rye IPA a slightly longer boil, but the slickness that you get out of this beer does make me wonder, to be honest with you. The longer you boil the beer, of course, the longer the more the caramel, the sugars caramelise, actually. But yeah, this is very nice. But yeah, straight away with this beer, then you get a nice kind of smooth. Brown bready kind of rye bread sweetness there. That kind of goes straight across the middle of your palate, and that forms the backbone of the middle third of your tongue. As you go further into the aftertaste, that kind of builds up a little bit. You do get a bit more of a kind of grainy dryness out of the beer. When you go to the back third of your palate, it actually, to me, comes across as being very, very smooth. But then you do, at the very back of the palate, you do get more of the graininess coming out, but you can feel on that back third of your palate the graininess does the bready qualities just thicken up a little bit in this one, which is which is really quite interesting. So I like how it's got that slightly thicker bready note on the back third of the palate there, but you can feel as you move further forward in this one, it's very, very smooth. It says on the side of the can that there's a bit of wheat in there, and I think that smoothness that you get on the back third of the palate is the wheat, and I've always found that wheat comes out a little bit more on that back third of your palate rather than the kind of middle third of your palate, to be honest. So yeah, interesting. Yeah, this is it's a lovely beer, this one, in my mind. It grows on me. It's one of these ones, when I tried it I was like, alright, okay, it's solid enough, but the more and more I drink of it, the more I start to appreciate it. And like I said at the start of the video, I really think Rye IPAs are just a bit underappreciated, to be honest with you. It is a style you don't come across too many examples of this, but I think if they're done well, they can be. And if anyone's going to do it well, you know, OO Brewing would be a solid choice to make for the brewery. But yeah, I like this. The smoothness, the balance between the wheat and the rye in this is very nice. But in that middle third of your palate, you can get the sweeter side of this beer coming out. In the very centre of your tongue, you've got a bit of a sweet caramel. As you move out from that very centre of your tongue, you start to get the more kind of biscuity, more biscuity sort of grainy notes coming out of the beer, which again is quite nice. Yeah, and I mean, you will get one or two little woody elements. If you go to the front corners of your palate, then diagonally back, you'll get a few wee woody elements out of it. But yeah, there's not too much else to report from this beer in terms of the malt base. It's solidly done, and that's what we've come to expect from this brewery, I have to say. On the back corners of the palate, then you've got a nice little bit of earthiness in there. As you move further forward, I would say that the earthiness maybe comes from mosaic. I do think there is mosaic in this, but as you move further forward along the side of the palate, you do start to get a little bit more. There is a wee touch of herbal quality there, and then on the front corners of the palate there's a wee bit of floral aromaticity, and round the front curve of the tongue it's just a little bit lighter and more grassy. I think the hops in this beer mainly are late addition hops, but we'll talk about that when it comes to mouthfeel. But yeah, as I always say, on the front third of your tongue, that's where you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. And yeah, this one really is oranges all the way. There's something that makes me wonder about this beer as well. The more that I drink of it, there's something that makes me wonder if there's a bit of cascade in this, because some of the fruity notes you get out of this, it's just got a wee touch of that kind of red fruity figgy sort of thing, and it makes me think of Cascade. It reminds me of the Schiehallion lager that I would have from Harveston Brewery back home in Scotland, and that's a Cascade hopped Czech style pilsner. And the notes that you get out of this, there's just some of it really reminds me of Cascade, so I wouldn't be surprised if there's Cascade in this, come to think of it. So maybe I've called it wrong on Mandarina Bavaria. The flavour's making me think Cascade. Always love playing Guess the Hops with these beers, and you'll know that if you've watched the channel. But yeah, if you go towards the back of that front third of your palate, you do get a wee touch of that kind of darker grapefruity note there. That's something else that makes me wonder about Cascade. But as you come further forward, it does gradually develop to a bit more orangey and zesty. You get a few of those little almost figgy, kind of figgy, red fruity type notes there as you move further forward. But then as you reach the front half of that front third of your palate, it's the big orangey notes that come out of this beer, and I think that's a mixture. I'm pretty sure that's a mixture of Amarillo and potentially Mosaic as well. Either that or it might just be Mosaic. Yeah. See, I'm questioning myself about the Amarillo now, because as I say, normally with Amarillo you would expect a bit more of an oiliness to it than you're getting. So it could be that this is Cascade and Mosaic that's in this one. And I think, yeah, I'm not, as I say, I'm not 100% sure about the Amarillo in this. Questioning myself, as I always do. But yeah, on that front half of the front third of your tongue, you really get a nice big sort of zesty quality out of the beer. It's got that big orangey zesty sort of thing. So yeah, it's interesting with that. The fruity side of this beer, front half of that front third of your palate, like I say, big and zesty, but the back third of it is a bit more kind of pungent and grapefruity. So the fruity side of this beer really has a bit more of a bite to it. which is quite interesting, whereas normally with other rye IPAs you would expect it to be a little bit more oily and kind of sweet. So that's definitely an interesting point to make about this beer for sure. So yeah, just pay attention to that. That's quite quirky, I have to say. So yeah, really interesting combination of things going on with this beer, I have to say. But it gets a thumbs up from me. I certainly like this one. A very slick rye IPA in my mind. So on that note, we should go on to the mouthfeel. I would say that this beer is pretty mid-bodied. The carbonation is very, very smooth in this one, and like I say, this is a very, very slick beer for me. It's got a very nice kind of slickness and smoothness to it, which I really, really quite like. In terms of the hoppy bitterness and things like that, I think this one, what would we say? This beer strikes me as being fairly low IBUs. I've got a feeling that this, does it tell you on the can? I think this one is maybe just around a kind of 40-ish IBU, 50 at most. In fairness, you do feel the bitterness in this one building up a little bit into the aftertaste, and this is probably my weakest part of beer reviewing, is telling you the IBUs, because I've thought that things were, I always kind of mix it up. This one could even be higher than that, because you do feel the bitterness building up, but I find it quite smooth. I do find this beer quite smooth in terms of its hoppy bitterness, to be honest with you. So I would say, part of me wants to say it's about 40 IBUs. It is a little bit more bitter, but there's part of me as well that wants to say it's about 60, because you really feel the bitterness building in the side of the palate there. I really need to train myself a bit better with that, to be honest with you, so I'm not sure what to tell you about the IBUs in this one, but you do feel the bitterness just building up a little bit in this beer in my mind. In terms of the malty side of things, then again, very, very smooth. You've got a bit of sweetness there in the middle of your palate, but you've got some smoothness from the wheat towards the back third of your tongue. A good bit of hoppy bitterness, we've said. And the fruits in this, for me, they have got a little bit of bite to them, a little bit of pungency. Not quite as oily as I would normally expect from a rye IPA, but this one, in terms of drinkability, is very, very nice. Come to think of it, most rye IPAs that I've come across, I think, have been into the sort of 7% marker. Usually rye IPAs, I think, are 7.2%, that kind of thing. So maybe the fact that this one's a little bit slicker is just because of the lower alcohol content, but at the same time, I think the slightly lower bitterness is to kind of reflect where we are in terms of IPAs. People are used to lower bitterness beers these days compared to what they were in, say, 2015, 2016. Yeah, this one, it's a really, really nice beer, that, and the fruits, as I say, a little bit oily, a little bit bitey. I think this one goes together really quite nicely, actually. So yeah, gets a thumbs up from me, and it's cool to try a rye IPA from OO Brewing, of course. So yeah, I do need to see about trying a black IPA from these guys at some point. That's something that I would be very excited to look at. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one then. This one was the Scarlet Rye, a rye IPA at 6.7% ABV from OO Brewing in Gothenburg on the west coast of Sweden. Another style that we hadn't tried from these guys before, but it did turn out to be very, very nice. So yeah, thank you again for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from OO Brewing. Like I said, we will return to these guys at some point in the near future, but this was another really interesting beer, and I certainly enjoyed it. So until the next time, Slange just now, check out my social media, check out OO Brewing, and I will catch you guys in the next review. Cheers.